to be your treasurer. Each of you has treated me with the utmost respect, and I've enjoyed working for you and with you on what now is going to be completing my 5th year here in Bexley, which is hard to believe, but pales in comparison to the service you all have provided. You get the bullets, and I know that, and not a lot of people don't know that either, but one thing I wanted to really stress was how thankful I am to have what I believe gained your trust or treated me with your trust. And that's tough currency to have nowadays, is to have the trust of somebody. And I believe I've received that from all 3 of you. So I feel that, and thank you. And thank you on behalf of the many students and staff members as well. Your service is so thankless. I think one great thing about Bexley is people do see you and know that they can reach out to you. So being a board member, knowing that coming in, and be willing to take on that role and that leadership role says a lot about you and the character of your service. So thank you. One thing I will note that's not on the agenda, and I'm sure many of us in this room probably see it fly through our emails, but it's House Bill 126. While I will always answer the call to something that's detrimental to Bexley, I don't know that this bill would be super detrimental, but I do believe it's an attack on public education finance. So again, I'll say it's House Bill 126. I can't speak to it very intelligently. But what that essentially is making it harder for school districts to protect the tax base with property taxes. Property taxes are the largest revenue source for Bexley and many other school districts. And what this proposed bill, it's not been approved or voted on yet, at least in the Senate, but it's in the Senate right now. But what that essentially does is makes it harder for us to challenge values on properties in our district. Why did I say it's not going to be hugely detrimental to us? Is because we are primarily residential. You'll see this impact significantly districts that have larger commercial values. But I'm a believer of public funding in general, or public education in general, and I believe this worries me to see us go down this path and how the erosion of school funding is happening with this particular bill. So I just wanted to mention that. So turning to the board agenda for the monthly financial report, we are still waiting on the Ohio Department of Education to finalize the funding formula for the schools. So we've been given an October date of when we get a formula, then we were given a December date, and then just within the last 10 days, I think they revised their statement and said, we'll be finished in December for you to see it in January. So I don't believe I'll have any report in January on the formula. I believe I'll have something more in depth in February.
But you do think we'll get it before we're trying to operate in a new...
I would hope, yes. So some of the variances are due to, I believe, the delay in funding. So we built the forecast based on the best working knowledge that we had of the formula at the time. And some of those variances, I believe, are impacting, some of our variances are impacted by that. And that is in particular the revenue lines of 1.035 and 1.06. So I'll report more in February. Overall, there's November's not an exciting month financially. We just had a few of those anyway. But I would note on the second page of the financial report, I've added 2 graphs that we haven't seen before. I'll play around with these over as the months go by. Instead of just looking at numbers, maybe graphs might be more palatable. But the bottom one is just revenues over expenditures. This this will, we'll see a wave over the 12 months, but what this represents is we get a large influx of revenue early in the fiscal year, and then we live off of that revenue and expenditures eventually catch up to it. So that's what's happening now. That'll continue in December and a little bit of January when we start collecting property taxes again. Moving on in the agenda, item 4C is an amended appropriation measures, mainly to account for the federal grant allocations that change about this time of year, as well as an increase in appropriation related to item 4D. This is the new resolution look because of the new financial software, so that was, it does look different than maybe the old type that you're used to. But item 4D, as you can see in the report provided by Mr. Reichenberry, is the turf on Carlton Smith Field needing to be replaced. What's unique about this situation is we are going to be using the revenue from 2 cell phone towers that, when put in place, we dedicated that revenue towards turf replacement. So while the dollars are taxpayer dollars, because any dollar that we receive belongs to the taxpayer, the revenue source comes from rental of that space. So, which I think is something proud that this community did years ago when we put that in to help fund for turf replacement. So that's one reason for appropriation increase to use that money. Otherwise, we usually don't appropriate or budget for it. So we did that here. And for your information, the 2 cell phone towers, we have 2. They generate about $80,000 per year that we just bank until it's time for turf replacement.
Is that the only use of those funds? Is it?
We've used them for maybe little things here and there. We did use some of the dollars for the tennis court renovations.
Okay, but generally for the athletic complex.
Yeah, usually out there by the cell phone towers.
Okay.
So yes, we will probably have a need for the softball field turf soon as well, and we'll use these funds at the same time.
Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, I should have asked you this in advance, because possibly, Mr. Eichenberry, you can answer the question. Does the turf come with an extended warranty, or is it, what's the usual warranty life on the
8
turf?
years.
8 years?
Right. We typically get 10, 11.
Okay. And is it for just normal wear and tear, or does it include a failure if you discover a failure in the turf?
Correct. If it would be failure, they would replace it. That's part of the warranty.
We're responsible for the drainage installation.
Drainage is part of the initial process. It's been recertified, so this is just a recarpeting, if you will.
Okay, that's all I was going to ask. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, that's all I had. Sorry, Mr. Smith.
No, that's all I have.
And Ms. Snowden was on board with that.
I'm fairly
August 2011. Your warranty is extended past.
That is not what I was trying to get at.
All right, thank you. I did just want to note that I really appreciate having those funds available, and also to note that although our athletic teams do benefit from that, it's all of our student body that benefits from that area, the band, much as PE classes, all sorts of activities, yeah. So I really appreciate making sure that that's in as good a shape as it can be, so thank you. Are there any other, is that the end of? Yeah, so any questions from Mr. Smith? Okay. Then can I have a motion to approve items 4B through G, please?
So, second.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. That motion carries. All right, thank you. So moving on to public comment, Mr. Smith. We have members.
Yes,
Yes.
we do.
Thank you. Then I will start by saying, although under state law, the Board of Education is not required to offer public comment during the regular board meetings, we welcome the opportunity to hear from our community members. As such, we encourage your participation within certain parameters. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes per our board policy. Finally, we know public comment is just that. It's the public's opportunity to be heard. It is not a question and answer session with the board. We look forward to hearing your comments, but per our board policy, we will not respond to public comment in the meeting or individually as board members. You can be assured that we are actively listening and taking notes for future reference and review. So doing that.
Mike Dennison.
Mr. Dennison, I want to also say I appreciate your understanding and your patience in waiting to speak to public comment. We've been working really hard to remain faithful to our policy that requires that all meetings strictly follow our pre-published agenda. So thank you for your patience.
Thanks. I have one quick comment to make before I hopefully doesn't count against my time. My name is Mike Dennison. I live at 663 Montrose. And before I get started, the reason I came tonight, I do also want to thank Michelle, John, and Marley for their service to the district, our community, and most importantly, our students. In our many years of service together, whether that was 2 years or 8 years, Marley, we didn't always agree. But each of your dedications to what was best for our students was always very apparent. And I hope each of you, as you leave your service tonight, feels that our district and the educational experience of our students has been vastly improved by the fact that you are on board. That's something I deeply believe and hope you do as well. We weren't, I guess I wasn't aware that the policy would have been voted on already by the time we got to public comment, but I thought it was important to share the comments that Bexley DEI put together and the statement they put together based on the equity and education policy. So I'll just read that as it is. So my name is Mike Dennison. I live at 663 Montrose Avenue. I'm here to provide public comment on the proposed equity and education policy on behalf of Bexley DEI as one of their executive board members. For those of you that may be unfamiliar, Bexley DEI Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is a grassroots organization comprised of community members advocating for policies and practices that eliminate racism and all sorts of inequities in Bexley, Ohio. Our organization's vision is that everyone in our community feels safe and is treated with respect and dignity in all contexts. We respect and value diverse life experiences and work to create an environment that is inclusive of all. That vision includes the students, faculty, and staff of our schools who form an important and invaluable component of our Bexley family. To that end, we want to commend the administration and Board of Education for their efforts in crafting the proposed equity and education policy being discussed tonight and passed. We feel it's a crucial first step in creating an equitable educational environment for all students. While the intent of the policy being discussed and potentially passed, or actually passed tonight, is commendable, and as a former board member, I'm encouraged to see the board continue the important work of making the district a safer space for all students to flourish. Bexley DEI does feel it's necessary to stress that we see this policy as only a first step, an outline of a vision and a set of broad goals, without the specific actions and measurable outcomes that can make the vision real for the students of our community. Equity, unlike many things, lives in the actual behavior of people on the ground, from the board in this room to administrators in their offices and teachers in their classrooms. It depends on the specifics. It depends on the action and the implementation. Said another way, it's far easier to say in a policy that our district will provide an equitable education environment than it is to actually create that lived experience for each and every one of our students. The superintendent, board, administration, staff, and faculty, as well as our community, must acknowledge the incredibly hard work and daunting responsibility laid out before them by the words this policy commits to paper. Passage of this policy, followed by inaction or inadequate action, would be a devastating outcome for our students and our community. Bexley DEI also appreciates the board reaching out to our group and others like ours for input on the policy. It demonstrates a willingness of the board to listen to the community and build consensus. Rather than a well-intentioned top-down approach that creates a policy and then asks for community input, though, we would ask you to imagine what a ground-up approach might have looked like. A process that could have convened our entire community together to discuss, debate, and deconstruct issues of equity before ever deciding what action or policy was necessary. How would that have looked different? How would that have felt different to our community? How could that approach start to model and encourage the very culture of equity this policy seeks to create? As a former board member, I understand the impulse to solve a problem by crafting policy. It is the main tool boards have at their disposal. I encourage you, though, as you embark upon this work, to think expansively about how to accomplish the goals set forth within the policy. Equity is so important and so foundational to the district's mission that achieving it may require unconventional approaches that lie outside of what has been done before. As for the policy itself, we would encourage the district to add, quote, academic ability to the otherwise comprehensive list of characteristics that have historically been treated inequitably. Bexley's achievement culture has long skewed the district's resources towards our most high-performing students to the detriment of academically typical or academically non-conforming students who also deserve, quote, specifically targeted resources, attention, and support. Any equity in education policy must serve these students too. Also, while the policy recognizes larger national and community-based issues of contemporary and historical discrimination, it neglects to include any mention of the inequity often intentionally baked into our educational institutions, nor does it acknowledge any specific past or current actions of the district that upheld, reinforced, or exacerbated these systems of inequity. The policy as written does not say out loud what it infers by its sheer existence, that education in America is not equitable. That education in Bexley has historically not been equitable. That education in Bexley today is not equitable. We've repeatedly heard from impacted people that simple public recognition of this fact is important to them. We would urge the board to begin the policy with such a statement so that students, families, and community members who have been impacted by a lack of equity will see that the board recognizes them. Such recognition is important to building trust with the community to facilitate the actions this policy will require over time. This policy states that the board will, quote, hold itself, teachers, staff, and administrators accountable for supporting a district-wide culture of equity. We support the board's language following that pledge to set clear metrics and standards that will be tracked and regularly reported to the board. Only through clearly tracked metrics, standards, and solutions will we be able to track our future needs and progress. The proposed policy also charges the superintendent to develop an equity plan and report on progress towards the board's equity goals annually, rather than rely solely on the internal resources to create this plan and annual report. We strongly encourage the district to create an equity advisory group comprised of accountable district personnel and a diverse set of students and community stakeholders, including representatives of groups like DARM, the MPA, BART, and Bexley DEI, to collaboratively develop and agree upon the, quote, clear asset-based standards, solutions, metrics, and procedures that will be used to measure the district's progress. As our collective understanding of the needs and challenges inherent in creating equity in our schools will undoubtedly change over time, we also encourage the board to add a line at the end of the policy stating that, quote, the board will continue to develop the policy based on both, one, how its understanding of equity evolves over time, and two, how the annual equity report data provides a clear picture of needs and best practices. Such a commitment would underscore that this policy is intended to be a living document that will change and improve as we develop better ways to achieve an increasingly more equitable school system. Finally, while there's much still left to figure out and many challenges, both foreseeable and unknown ahead, Bexley DEI is hopeful and stands ready, along with many other committed groups and individuals in our community, to work alongside the district, shoulder to shoulder, to create the equitable future this policy envisions. Because that future is what every one of our children deserves, and creating it is the responsibility of not only all of you, but all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, are there any other individuals signed up for both?
No, that's it.
We have a brief time before we go into executive session. When the board reconvenes in January, we will have, will not have a quorum of 5. We'll have 2 board members we have now. And the first thing that needs to be done is in our organizational meeting, some actions need to be voted on, and so we need a president to do that. And so I would like to move to appoint Victoria Powers as our president pro tempore for the January organizational meeting until a president can be elected at that same meeting for 2022. So that is my motion. Can I have a second, please?
A second.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you. We appreciate your service. And with that, it's time for us to move into executive session. So under, in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, section 121.22, we are moving into executive session for the purpose of employment and compensation of a public employee or official. Can I have a motion to move into executive session for that reason?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. That motion carries. So we will adjourn to public, into executive session. We do not anticipate a vote after executive session. So we will just come back in and adjourn our meeting at that time.
Pop the champagne.
Exactly. All right. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you very much for all your